Hi, my name is Cole, and today I will be defending my faith. I do believe in my faith, a higher power, a creator for this world. I'm a Catholic and have been raised that way. I do practice my faith, not enough as I would like, but I do. I know a slight bit about the Bible and its timelines, stories, and I know a good amount about its teachings. My family and high school religion teachers are definitely the two groups of people that are most responsible for getting me to develop my faith. More specifically, my mom's side of the family, who are Italian, introduced me to my faith and got me baptized, at my first communion, first confession, and more. They took me to church when I was younger and still do during important times in the Catholic calendar, or also when there's some type of passing in my family. But more recently in my life, my grade 11 and 12 religion teachers have also played a big role in educating me more about my faith, what it teaches, and the history behind it. It has made me more engaged in my faith, while making me realize that I should be more involved with my duties as a Catholic. However, I know I have way more to learn, so that is why at this point in time I would say I cannot adequately defend what I believe. I could tell you why I believe in it, and I also probably have a rudimentary enough understanding to dispel some of the most basic arguments, but not all of them. Explaining why I believe in a higher power. One reason I believe in a higher power is the first cause argument. When I look at the world around me, nothing happens without a cause. Things do not just appear out of nowhere. This idea makes sense to me logically, and it has been discussed by philosophers like Aristotle and later by St. Thomas Aquinas. Aristotle argued that everything that moves or changes needs something to cause it. If there were an infinite chain of causes going back and forth forever, nothing would ever start moving. Since we see things moving and changing every day, there must be a first cause, or unmoved mover, that starts everything without needing anything to cause it. Think of a chain of dominoes. Every single domino falls because of the one before it fell on it. But there needs to be some kind of outside force that helps the first domino fall, which I believe is God. Modern science supports the idea that the universe had a beginning, often explained by the Big Bang. If the universe began to exist, then something must have caused it to begin. I find it unreasonable to believe that the universe caused itself, since that would mean it existed before it existed, which doesn't make any sense. Aquinas argued that there must be a first cause that is not caused by anything else, and that this cause exists outside of time and space. To me, this description fits what I believe God is. This argument strengthens my faith because it shows that belief in God is not just based on tradition, but also on logic and reason. I believe the existence of the universe points itself towards a higher power that started everything. Another reason I believe in God is the fine-tuning of the universe. When I learn about how the universe works, I'm struck by how precise everything is. The laws of physics and the constants of nature are extremely specific, and even small changes would make life impossible. This does not feel random to me. Physicist Roger Penrose calculated that the probability of the universe beginning in a life-permitting state is extremely small, suggesting that just chance alone is a very unlikely explanation. For example, let's look at the cosmological constant, which controls the rate of the universe's expansion. It is set so precisely that if it were larger or smaller by just one part in 10 to the power of 120, that means 120 zeros, the universe would either collapse too quickly or expand too fast for galaxies and stars to form. This just can't be random to me. When I think about these odds, I struggle to believe that the universe just happened to turn out perfectly by accident. To me, it is similar to finding something complex and assuming it had no designer. Like finding a watch on a beach and just thinking, oh, maybe the way the sand and the waves form just made that. No, I don't believe that for 1 second. I believe the fine-tuning of the universe points to intention rather than coincidence. This argument defends my faith because it shows that life is not an accident. Instead, the universe appears carefully structured to allow life to exist. I do not see science and faith as being in conflict here. Instead, science helps me better understand how ordered the universe truly is, and that order strengthens my belief in a higher intelligence behind it. The origin of life is another reason I believe in a higher power. While science explains how life evolves over time, it does not fully explain how life began in the first place. Life relies on complex systems, especially DNA, which contains detailed information. Information, such as language or code, usually comes from intelligence rather than just random chance. Chemist James Tour argues that Current scientific theories cannot fully explain how non-living chemicals could form the first living cell. Even a single cell is incredibly complex. For example, the ribosome acts like a tiny factory, reading genetic instructions and building proteins necessary for life. Scientists can create individual molecules in a lab, but they cannot create a functioning ribosome or the full system of a living cell from scratch. This shows that life is way more than just random chemicals coming together by chance. This shows me how large the gap is between non-life and life. For me, this gap points to the involvement of a higher power. I believe God played a role in starting life and giving it purpose. This argument defends my faith because it shows that belief in God is reasonable when considering how complex and meaningful life truly is. So getting more in detail, I'm going to be explaining why I believe specifically in Catholicism and Jesus Christ. One major reason I believe Catholicism is credible is because Jesus Christ is a real historical figure and one of the most well-documented people in history. My faith is not based on a made-up story, but on a person who actually lived in history. Jesus is mentioned not only in the Bible, but also in non-Christian historical sources. Roman historian Tacitus wrote that Jesus was executed under Pontius Pilate, and Jewish historian Josephus also referred to Jesus and his followers. These writers were not Christian, which makes their accounts more reliable. When I compare Jesus to other historical figures around this time, like Julius Caesar, people before that, I noticed something important. We believe Julius Caesar existed, even though the sources about him were written years after his life and are far fewer than the sources about Jesus. If you go up to someone and you ask, is Julius Caesar a real person? Is this other old Roman person a real person? I'm going to be like, yeah, Alexander the Great. Yeah, that's a real person. They wrote books about him. Then, you ask about Jesus, and they'd be like, I don't know, all of those books can be made up. If the books about Jesus can be made up, then how would you accept anyone as a real person? Jesus is one of the most well-documented people ever. If we accept Caesar as real, it would be inconsistent to then reject Jesus, who has more historical references and manuscripts written much closer to his lifetime. For me, this strengthens my faith because Catholicism is rooted in real history, not legend. If Jesus truly existed, then his teachings and actions deserve serious attention. Believing in Catholicism feels reasonable to me because it is built on historical evidence, not blind faith. Another reason I believe Catholicism is true is because of how many people were willing to die for what they witnessed about Jesus. After Jesus' death, his followers openly spoke about his miracles, his resurrection, and his teachings, even though doing so put their lives in danger. Many of the apostles and early Christians were persecuted and killed for refusing to deny what they have claimed to see. What stands out to me is that people may lie to protect themselves, but they rarely choose to die for something they know is false. The apostles gained no wealth, no power or safety from spreading their message. Instead, they faced imprisonment, torture, and death. This makes me believe they truly believed what they were saying. Catholicism teaches that these men were eyewitnesses to Jesus' miracles and resurrection. If these things never happened, it would make no sense for so many people to willingly suffer and die defending them. For me, the willingness of these witnesses to give up on their lives adds credibility to the claims of Catholicism. It shows that my faith was built on real experiences and not just made-up stories. This strengthens my belief that what they proclaimed about Jesus was true. Now I'm going to be debunking / giving my opinion on some popular arguments against Catholicism. One criticism people often bring up against Catholicism is the problem of evil. They ask, if God is all-powerful and all good, then why does suffering exist? At first, this question can feel really difficult, and it did make me think about my faith. But Catholicism teaches that God gave humans free will, and suffering is often a result of human choices rather than God's intention. It is God's permissive will, not his perfect will. For example, wars, crime, and selfish actions hurt people, but God allows us to make choices, even when they are wrong. Catholicism also teaches that God can bring good out of suffering, like how Jesus' death on the cross brought salvation to the world. From my perspective, suffering does not disprove God. It reminds me that we live in a world with free will, where our choices have real consequences. If there were no suffering, there would be no real freedom, and no real love or moral growth. I believe that God's goodness is not contradicted by suffering, but his love is shown through the hope and courage that people show in these difficult situations. Another criticism that people make is the Catholic Church caused wars or violence in history. Critics often point to the Crusades or other conflicts involving Christians. While it is true that some church leaders acted wrongly in history, Catholicism itself teaches peace, love, and justice. The actions of people in the church are not the same as the teachings of Christ all the time. I remind myself that Catholicism is centered on Jesus' messages: love your neighbor, forgive enemies, and serve the poor. The mistakes of humans do not erase the truth of God's teachings. Even today, the church works around the world to help promote peace, help victims of war, and provide education and healthcare. From my perspective, this shows the difference between human sin and divine guidance. Just because some Catholics acted wrongly does not mean the church is wrong itself, and it definitely doesn't mean that Catholicism is wrong in itself. I believe Catholicism's teachings are consistent with peace and morality, and the historical failures of some individuals do not change the truth about what the Bible teaches. Another thing I often hear is that some people argue Catholicism conflicts with science, claiming that faith ignores reason. I disagree. Many scientists throughout history have been theists, and Catholicism has often supported scientific discovery. For example, Georges Lemaitre, a Catholic priest, proposed the Big Bang Theory. A number of scientists throughout history have been devout Christians. Catholic teaching encourages understanding creation, but not rejecting science. While the Church sometimes made mistakes in the past, it has also helped preserve knowledge, to found universities, and it has supported research. Personally, my faith and reason work together. I believe in God while also studying the universe and understanding its laws. Isaac Newton was a Christian who wrote extensively on theology in addition to his physics and math. Galileo Galilei was also a Catholic, supported heliocentrism, and remained faithful to the Church. Max Planck was a branch of Christian also, and he's the father of quantum theory. In short, these scientists believe in God because the more deep they got into their research, they found design, order, and purpose in the universe. Their discoveries made them more aware on how intricate and finely tuned the world is, which strengthened their faith instead of weakening it. Thank you for listening to me defend and explain my faith.